What happened on Friday for the Canadian Grand Prix? That was a very... practice is not exciting usually, but this was quite the... Well, will it be representative? I don't know. We don't know what's going to really come of these sessions because it depends if it's going to rain over Saturday and Sunday. But Tommy, still a few things happened, a few talking points, and we might well be set up for a lovely weekend.
Speak for yourself about not being representative. I'm looking forward to a Fernando Alonso masterclass for him to win the race. George Russell second and Stroll third.
Let's start with free practice 1 then. And there was a heavy downpour at the start. There was a 20-minute wait to see some of the cars. We're just all sat there. Because it was weird, wasn't it? The session started, but the FIA were like, you're not going out though. The session started, but the pit lane exit is closed. You ain't going anywhere near the track.
Yeah, that's an odd one.
Which is
isn't it?
an odd one. I don't recall that ever being that kind of thing. And I wonder if... I don't know, why would they do that? Because sometimes they've been a bit more lenient and delayed or pushed things back, but they just very much just thought, no, it starts now and you can't go out.
Yeah, sometimes, and a lot of the time they do it, when you get a red flag or something, or they close the pit lane and the time is still going, but it's strange that it's still going after starting.
It's usually when it's already started.
Yeah, when it's already
they don't
started.
Pause it. But when
Exactly.
Usually if they have a problem or whatever, they might have delayed it. Think of Vegas, for example, and how they bent over backwards after the drain problem to make sure that they had more running. But either or, we did have some cars eventually go out, and then Zhou Guanyu almost immediately crashing and causing a red flag. Very strange incident. I know that it's a new track surface, isn't it? And it's going to be slippery with the rain coming down, and you could see that the drainage wasn't particularly great, and there was quite a lot of standing water around the track. But still, Zhou, on his preparation laps, this wasn't even far into when he'd actually gone out, crashes into the barrier, breaks the left-hand side of his car and the steering arm and the track rod, and it just put an end to his session before it even begun.
Yeah, more problems for Kick Sauber, and Zhou is not having a good time of it at the moment. He's not been delivering, and it's just another crash. I'd be very, very surprised if his name is even in the mix now for these few seats that are left in 2025, but if he is, that's definitely not helping, is it, to go straight in the wall.
Moving on from that, we had a bit of slick running, a tiny bit, where there was a dry line. And as soon as I see that sort of small, narrow dry line, it takes me back to Zandvoort last year when we're talking to Carlos Sainz about how he feels in the wet when when the drivers have such a narrow margin to play with here. And that's what we saw, and some of the drivers were making mistakes. You had in the middle sector a part where I don't know exactly the turn name, but it's after the first sector split, and then you go down the small little straight, and then you have the right left. That some of the drivers just went straight on into what literally looked like a swimming pool. You didn't see it until the car went in there, and then it just went whoosh, and there was so much water in there. I think Daniel Ricciardo was one to properly kick up a lot of the water, but I did find that quite shocking the first time I saw it, just how much came up.
Yeah, you see it. You see a lot of drivers go off there. I don't know if there is an official name for it.
It's now called the swimming pool. Yeah, it's been taken from
the
Monaco
swimming pool from
to
Monaco.
The swimming pool. Yeah.
I just, for me, it's the Vettel corner of where he cut across. But we've seen that many times, haven't we?
And also another thing to speak about was Jack Doohan, who got his FP1 outing of an installation lap and then going out at the end to do a practice start.
He'd have got more data doing one of those, when teams just are like, we're going to take a show car to Paris or something and drive around at down a road. He'd have got more preparation doing that, I think. But
is that his first FP1 outing?
No,
he's been out before, hasn't he?
Mexico, I think, at the end of last season, when all the teams at the end of the season
they all just do their usual.
Oh wait. Because it's an interesting explanation, actually, about the reasoning behind it, and because he spoke about it on the coverage, and he was saying that it makes sense that Ocon had the 5-second penalty. It's quite a green track normally, so even if it had been...
Pace grid penalty.
Sorry, what did I say?
5 second. Yeah, I know he gets a lot of 5-second penalties, mate, but he's
I
not
just
bringing
hit
a
Ocon
5-second
and I think
into this
5-second
race.
penalty. No, Ocon has the grid penalty, and so he's going to have a difficult race anyway, and it's quite a green track, but what he was saying, that in the end, it kind of worked out well that they could take the hit. It worked out for everyone apart from him, who obviously wanted the running, but for Alpine,
they ticked
they
the
were
box,
kind of
didn't
like,
they?
well, no one got any decent running, so we didn't feel like we wasted a session, I guess, in Alpine's. They didn't say that, but do you know what I mean? Like,
I was going to say, if Alpine does think that, then they really have no hope for Jack Doohan taking that seat. If they're like, well, tick the box, don't matter about you going out there, mate, don't worry about that. I think that the problem for Jack, and they said this in commentary as well, actually, it's a great point, is that these sessions are so important for a young driver to be able to show what they are worth and how they conduct themselves in the car, changeable conditions, difficult conditions. But Jack couldn't do that because he wasn't sent out. So how is he ever going to build on this, good CV, but not great, to be able to then convince Alpine or other teams that he's worthy of a full-time shot? You need these opportunities.
He needs that kind of Liam Lawson moment, who you could argue that Liam Lawson didn't have the greatest CV. He did well, but it wasn't a Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, George Russell kind of thing. So he needs that moment. He didn't get it today, which is a shame. I do think he'll get another opportunity because I think they will want to kind of assess him. It all depends with Alpine. I'd say never on it, by the fact that maybe who's going to want to drive for Alpine, really?
So the end of FP1, Lando Norris finished on top, but I will just say that Charles Leclerc was on a faster lap, and then got blocked by 17 cars into the final chicane, although the Ferraris, for whatever reason, both in FP1 and FP2, just were the slowest car going through the final chicane. They blocked about 7 different drivers during today, which I found very bizarre.
It was always a Ferrari at that
just
final
every
chicane.
time.
Every single time.
And it was warranted, moaning from the drivers as well, because they were going.
Fernando made a sassy comment that said typical Ferrari.
Yeah, typical Ferrari.
And I thought, oh, that's a weird thing to say. Why is he going on about Ferrari? And then we saw it happen again and again. So that must have been happening even before we saw about 6 replays of it happening after that incident. So they were going very slow around the final corner.
But still, they're going to win. Let's move to FP2 then. And it was Fernando Alonso, as Tommy mentioned at the top of the show, at the top of the timesheets, but it's completely and utterly not representative. And the big talking points to actually discuss, first and foremost, Red Bull. ERS problem with Max Verstappen. Now, he came into the pits, and I was like, oh, is that some spray? What's going on there? No, it was smoke that was coming out of his car, and that was curtains for the rest of his free practice 2 session. It's not the end of the world in the sense of, did he miss out on much running that will be completely and utterly representative? Probably not. But still, another issue for Red Bull.
More unreliability.
Exactly. Yep. Although a lot of teams take new engines going into this weekend, so I wonder if it was just one of those, slightly coughing and spluttering engine that they've just chucked in there, and if it blows up, it blows up.
And yeah, it is. It's more problems for Red Bull. They'll make a big thing of it. We won't know until we actually get some proper running. But it is another kind of, whether you call it delusion or optimism or hope or whatever.
Realism. As Ferrari fans, that's what we would call it. Yeah.
Because we've gone into this race now, and all the talk is, oh wow, this is a pleasantly surprising season, and people are actually quite close to Red Bull. And now they've had a problem, and they've been saying all weekend, this track's not going to suit us again. And yeah, could be very interesting indeed. Looks like it could be open again.
Stop it, everyone. Oh, Matt's on his delusional train again in predictions. I'm telling you, if this was a dry weekend, Ferrari walkover, I'm just saying, but it's not. Maybe. We don't know. The weather's changing all the time. We could get a window where we get a dry qualifying or a dry race. So let's see. Question from Chloe_Flower. Does Max's issues in free practice show us what the race could be like if the wet conditions continue into the race? What does Chloe mean in terms of how is this linked between Max's issues and what? How do you decipher that one, or Tommy?
I don't know the issues in terms of like the issue that he had in the session. I think maybe just pace issue.
Maybe,
and the fact
more
that
specifically.
I don't think it's anything to do with the actual reliability, because that doesn't affect them, because no one's really got representative data. So if you want to have, in a weird way, if you want to have a problem, it's in a session where no one's getting that much data anyway, and most people are sat in the garage. So from that side, that's a small silver lining on the issue, but they're not looking well, it's so hard to tell because you didn't see representation, but they really have been kind of saying a lot, this is a track where you have to bounce over the curbs, and that really is not good for Red Bull. The car is very stiff, and we've watched lots of replays of the Ferrari absolutely yeeting it over that final chicane. They are not afraid to use a lot of curb, but
even if they are going 30 miles an hour.
Exactly. But it doesn't seem to work for Red Bull, and that's what they struggle with, the bumps.
It seems as though this progression, this development of Red Bull has just taken it in a direction that has now this problem has been generated, and now it's ridiculous that we're saying that they can't ride over curbs. Like, it's bizarre. But yes, I think we're not going to take too much from this Friday, as we've said. Not particularly representative. We have 2 Aston Martins in the top 3. We have Daniel Ricciardo up in 5th.
Magnussen
By
6th.
the way, Daniel Ricciardo, did you see Jacques Villeneuve's comments about him?
I did.
Basically saying, why is he in F1? He's been doing this for 5 years now.
Not improving,
Yeah, this isn't a formula that you get all these chances. He slammed into him. Now, I think Jacques Villeneuve is very outspoken, obviously, and some of his opinions are completely and utterly wild. But I also kind of found it a little bit sort of Nico Rosberg refreshing in some ways, where I'm like, they're just calling people out left, right, and centre. They don't care.
It was, he's a controversial figure, but it is nice when a lot of the pundits obviously kind of are scared to speak their mind, and they have to think about the fact that they're going to be interviewing these drivers later down the line and stuff. But Jacques Villeneuve doesn't care, and he's happy just to, he was slandering Stroll, he was slandering Daniel Ricciardo, he was slandering the new regulations. He went in big time, didn't he, on Danny Rick?
He certainly did. Next question from AnnaFlower90. What's the penalty for using wet tyres in a dry session? Now, I find this rule so bizarre and strange, and I don't know why it even exists. I'm sure there is a safety issue there if a driver or a team decide to go out on a tyre that isn't supposedly meant to be used. But it was raining. The FIA were like, nope, it is not a wet session, even though it's raining. Nope. You either go out on dries when it's raining, or you wait in the pits. I'm sorry, how is that even... That doesn't make sense. If anything, that's
weird,
dangerous in itself. You may not go out on intermediates until we tell you that it is too wet. And also for the penalty, as of recording right now, we don't know what the penalty would be.
Fine,
I can't imagine in a practice session it would be anything other than a fine and a reprimand or something.
Maybe 60 points lost in the championship, something like that.
Oh yeah, as a Max fan, are you saying this because you're actually quite concerned that it's championship back on?
Yeah. No, I can see why they. I can see why they have that rule to a point of. In the races, it makes sense because you declare the track where otherwise you could put on intermediate tyres, and then it would kind of mean that you wouldn't have to do a mandatory pit stop because someone's used inters and then it's raining and stuff. So they have to kind of like declare that the track is wet to a point. But it is. I've never seen this scenario before where normally you get the rain at the start of the session and then they decide, no, the track is wet, But
I get that with the track is wet thing, and obviously trying to find a loophole of using the intermediates. But surely,
in a practice session,
but also just to cover it off. Surely the FIA declaring a session wet is when those intermediates would then become the only tyre you have to use. Like, if a team wanted to run the intermediates, but then the FIA never said that it was wet, then they shouldn't then be able to not have another pit stop. If you see what I'm saying.
Also, this is like a very crazy scenario that could happen, right? But
it probably will in Formula One. You know what I'm saying? Come on.
Yeah, you never know.
Hit me with it.
But say it's spitting with rain. They're all on dries, and they're not being able to get many good lap times. And there's 2 minutes left of a session, and someone bolts on the inters, and they go out because they can go quicker. It's like, well, no, you're not allowed because we've not said it's wet yet, even though that's the right tyre to be on. Doesn't... it is really odd, isn't it?
Okay, we'll move on to the next question from Rainer0_0V. Will the lack of running make quali in the race more exciting, especially if it's wet? Yes! Well, if it's wet, less so. So hear me out. So the fact it's been wet now means that we do have, we've lost a little bit of the unpredictability of the drivers experiencing a wet track on a newly resurfaced circuit for the first time. Like, they've got that in their locker, so they kind of know, although every wet session's slightly different, they kind of know what it feels like. But and honestly, I think we will get a better weekend if we don't have any more rain from here on in. Saturday and Sunday, dry as a bone, and I'm not just saying that because it'll be a Ferrari clean sweep, but also I think it genuinely would be a better race. I don't see Canada, with it being wet with these cars, I don't think it'll produce the race that we're all dreaming of. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for you to clip me up and say, my God, Matt, you know nothing. But that's my gut instinct.
My gut instinct is I really, 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 really hope it's the conditions that it has been today, because wet racing, there's been reports of, like thunderstorms and like really big rain showers like we got the start of FP1 where the track was completely soaked. And it's not only the fact that, we'll have a safety car start or delayed start and everyone will go, why do they even have wet tyres and all this kind of stuff, because it will happen. But the problem is that even those races that are just wet all the way through, they can just use inters and they will stay on inters the whole race, and you'll have a problem like Monaco where there's no pit stops and they'll just run to the end, where at least they can overtake it. But you know what I mean, in terms of like the best races and what we want is what happened today in the race. So it rains at the start, then it gets dry, then it's like people risking it on the dries, then it rains again and they have to go back on inters. You want those changeable conditions. That's when actual wet races, we say wet races, it's not really wet races, it's changeable racing is what we want. And that is what is going to make it good. And that's always good regardless, because it's more about driver skill and their instincts, and it's not so much about running to deltas and stuff. You have to take risks in pit stops and strategy and stuff. So yes, but even if it's dry like you say, it should still be very good because they don't have that data. Yeah,
so my answer was more envisaging a wet race and a wet race throughout. That's not what we want. We don't want that. We want, as you say, it drying up.
It feels like there's been a few wet races recently that haven't delivered because they have just been on inters the entire race.
Yeah, and we don't want constant.
And nothing happens because then they're too scared to overtake off the wet line and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
Changeable.
Changeable, please. We are going into tomorrow, quali day, having absolutely no idea who is quick. And we will see you there live on Twitch. Come and join us, Matt P1 Tommy. And we'll be synced up this time, because I know last time in Monaco we were synced up actually fully with the live real feed, and that annoyed a lot of people because we were spoiling it. We'll be back to our 2-minute delay so everyone can come in and have some fun, because Charles Leclerc's getting pole. See you soon. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.
It's quali day tomorrow. It's Charles Leclerc day tomorrow and Sunday.